Morning, everybody. How are you? You are watching The Sweat, presented by DraftKings, and for that, we love you. I'm Emerson Lotzia. Yes, we are going to do that hockey before the league suspends operations until after Christmas, which is a day the NBA takes center stage, and we'll help you build those basketball lineups for tonight as well. But first, I don't know about you guys, but my wife is super excited for a Tuesday night football doubleheader. So to honor the Meg Muffin, let's dive into these two bonus showdowns. Good morning to DraftKings contributors, Pierce Dietrich, Reed T. Fowler, and Jeff Ulrich. Reed T. Fowler, how are we feeling after Kirk Cousins last night, big guy? You nailed it with your bet.
So here's the thing, right? Jeff's going to mention, oh, he only put up like 87 passing yards. This is the lowest in his career. But Jeff's memory is horrible because back yesteryear when he said Kirk Cousins is not good, all that matters are wins. He wins yet again in primetime. That's 2 in a row, Jeff. So I don't know what argument you're going to come with this morning about he didn't throw any yards. He didn't do anything. He threw to a phantom wide receiver, which was clearly a pass interference. Go ahead. I'd just be rabid at you. You got
why are we talking about a guy who's got a sub 50% completion rate over his last 2 games?
All like your fancy
60,
stats.
like a 60 QBR rating.
The game in primetime. That's all you care about, Jeff.
You complete over 50% of your passes against the Bears.
Listen,
why are we talking about Kirk Cousins? Move on.
Okay, all right.
Kirk Cousins isn't involved. Take control, Emerson. Let's go.
He doesn't have to throw for 500 yards. I'm just saying Reed gave a good bet. Said, hey, over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Good for Reed, and this is a rivalry that has formed between you and Reed. All right, anywho. All right, so we have Seahawks, Rams, guys, Washington football team, and the Eagles. Both those games are at 7 o'clock tonight. Who are you going to play at captain for Seahawks Rams? Pierce, I'll let you go first here.
Yeah, it's going to be Cooper Kupp in this game. It's Cooper Kupp in every game. Good luck fading him on a showdown slate. Good luck fading him on the 2-game slate. Good luck fading him on any regular slate. He may not be the best receiver in football. He probably is. But he's definitely the best fantasy receiver. He came into the week with 151 targets, the most in the NFL, 20 more than Tyreek Hill. It's not just he gets targets. He gets targets because he's open. And when you're open, you catch those targets, you get yards, you get touchdowns. You look at last week in a tough matchup against the Cardinals, one of the better pass defenses in the league, got 13 of 15 for 123 yards and a touchdown. This week he gets the 28th ranked pass defense. I know it's going to be tough to fit him in, but he has to be in your lineup one way, shape, or form.
Oh, man, yeah, he is quite pricey there, Jeff. What do you want to do there? Cooper Kupp, 19-5 in the captain spot.
Well, since I can't take Kirk Cousins, I'm going to take the second best quarterback in the league, which is Russell Wilson. I don't know if Russell Wilson's the second best quarterback in the league. Certainly this year he's not. But I like him for this game at 16-5. He's the third most expensive player. And I think there's a lot of upside here for Russ in this game. I mean, obviously you've got the Seahawks coming in as plus 6.5 underdogs. They really haven't been a good rush team. I know Rashad Penny has reeled off a couple runs, but that was against the Texans. Russ averaged over 9.4 or 9.3 yards per attempt last week against Houston. They're throwing the ball downfield more. They're getting Dwayne Eskridge involved a little bit. And Russ is just playing better. Realistically, this is how you attack the Rams, too. You pass the ball. They've allowed 3 games of 300 yards or more to opposing quarterbacks in their last 6 starts. They're still really banged up on defense. I think Russ is going to be able to cook here. Again, we don't know the Lockett situation, but Metcalf, Gerald Everett, Eskridge, Freddie Swain, those guys are all going to be playing. I think Russell Wilson's in for a big game. I think other than Cooper Kupp, that's the guy who's got the most upside in the spot.
All right, Fowler, Seahawks, Rams. Your captain is who?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Jeff here on Russ Wilson for the contrarian play because I think most people are down on Russ except for Jeff. Jeff's been a Wilson stan for the entire year.
Since I was born.
Since he was born, one of his favorite quarterbacks. But that's the thing, right, is that you just don't know. It's hard to pick a skill player on Seattle because you just don't know where Russ is going to go. I'm sure Gerald Everett is going to get 14 red zone targets and fumble 3 away like he always does. I may be fighting people on Twitter about Gerald Everett is not the way to win this game. But at the same time, just take that out of it. If it's not Cooper Kupp, which is absolutely right by Pierce, it has to be Russ Wilson. These guys actually have a decent shot, the Seattle Seahawks, of actually covering and potentially winning this outright because the Rams, after that, it's a hard-fought game. We thought they were going to play on Sunday after playing on a short week, beating the Cardinals, beating a division foe. They could be a little down. They could be a little fatigued, even though you get this on a Tuesday. They don't really improve their position if they win this game in the playoffs. So I like going with the Seahawks in the contrarian build.
Yeah, Rams, by the way, 6.5-point favorite at home against the Seahawks in this one. Yeah, I know, right? All right, let's go to the Washington football team and the Eagles matchup. Reed, who are you going to captain there?
Jalen Hurts. If he doesn't come in with an injury designation in this game, you're getting the Washington football team is giving up the most points to the opposing quarterbacks, and Jalen Hurts is the thing that drives this machine. Like, you can definitely attack the passing game in this. I don't think Jalen Hurts, and we'll get to that in a little bit, how I'm attacking that. But from a standpoint, from a showdown standpoint, I actually think he's pretty cheap when it comes to a captain spot. So give me Jalen Hurts.
Okay, Ulrich, who do you want?
I mean, I want to stick with the Philadelphia side. I just don't know how much offense Washington is going to be able to generate. But I think Miles Sanders is an interesting contrarian play here. I mean, like, Hurts does have a high ankle sprain. I don't think he's 100%. I know he doesn't have the injury designation, but I really don't think he's 100%. And I think it's just going to lead to, if the Eagles do get a lead, you're going to see a little bit more Miles Sanders. He's averaged 16 carries over his last 3 games. He's hit like well over 60 yards in each of his last 3 games, running the ball well. And, you know, with how just depleted Washington is, again, I don't think you can rely on what's been a pretty good rush defense here. I think you're going to see more Miles Sanders in this game than people realize, especially if they get up. So I agree. Like, it could still just be a Hurts dominated. Maybe he is feeling a little bit better than I think. But I think Sanders is definitely the contrarian Eagle to captain here. Again, that carry total has been up, and the efficiency has been up lately for Sanders.
Hurts 18-3 and the captain, Sanders 14-1. Pierce, who are you going with at captain?
Let me just say this game's a mess.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Sanders is going to be contrarian at all. I believe he's one of the lesser questionable plays on this showdown slate, or even on the 2-game slate. We don't know what to expect from Washington. They have until 4 o'clock to finalize their COVID roster. So that's a huge mess. We're not going to know until 4 what really is going to happen. At least on Philly's side, we know that Miles Sanders is coming off of a big game. We know that they like to run the ball. We know that even if some of the guys come off the COVID list for Washington, there's still a pretty depleted defense. The issue with Philadelphia is, are they going to give the ball to all these different running backs? And they could do that. But we also don't know what Jalen Hurts is going to do. He split snaps with Gardner Minshew this week. He's not 100% healthy, and they could easily get out ahead with a double-digit lead, and maybe Hurts doesn't play the entire game. It's a mess. This is an absolute mess, but I'll go with Miles Sanders.
All right, let's go full 2-game slate now. Classic. Is there a guy on there who you think is actually underpriced, Jeff?
I mean, I don't know about underpriced, but I do like playing. Well, I guess he is kind of a little bit underpriced. I mean, I like playing the Seattle Seahawks wide receivers. I mentioned if I think this is a great spot for Russell Wilson. You know, it's tough to choose right now between Dwayne Eskridge and Freddie Swain, but I'm going to lean Freddie Swain here. You know, we've seen him pop up with the long touchdowns a couple times this year. And generally, when that play happens, Russell Wilson has gone for bigger totals. You saw it earlier in the year against San Francisco, against Tennessee. When Freddie Swain hits those long plays from Russ, the two generally combine for like a really nice fantasy day. I mean, this is completely reliant on you basically getting the long play downfield, but just with you know, the nature of this game, and again, we don't know the status of Tyler Lockett. I mean, again, like Pierce mentioned, these games everything could change here by the time, you know, we hit game time. But Freddie Swain has been playing in those like 3-4 wide receiver sets, and he gets the downfield targets from Russ. So I think if you're going to start Russell Wilson at quarterback and you need value, you throw Freddie Swain in there because they should be passing a lot. They're going up against the depleted Rams defense. That's one thing we do know. And Freddie Swain is just a pretty good downfield receiver. So I like going to him for value in the 2-gamer.
Pierce, how about you? By the way, great article about this classic slate here on DK Nation.
Thank you. Check that out on DK Nation. And so I'll just go ahead and read that article to you with my picks.
Perfect.
But look, you just don't want to do anything with that Philadelphia-Washington game. It's an absolute mess. And on the 2-game slate, I don't want to go near it. Maybe you consider the defense there for the Eagles. But Los Angeles just seems like the obvious place to go. And Odell Beckham Jr. is too cheap. I was down on Beckham. I didn't think he was going to play well, but he's caught 13 of 22 targets in his last 3 games, 180 yards, a touchdown in every single game, 16.5 DKFP. With all the uncertainty and a lot of not very good receivers, he seems like the obvious cheap receiver that everyone is going to play. I have no problem playing him. He's facing a really bad defense. Tight end Blanton for the Rams is also going to be, I think, a very popular punt as well.
Reed, who's underpriced on this Tuesday night football slate?
Yeah, I think what Pierce and Jeff are alluding to is, everyone's trying to stay away from that Philly game, right, with Washington, and that's the place that you potentially want to go for these contrarian, these value plays. Jeff talked about the stable of running backs that the Philadelphia Eagles have, but Jordan Howard is $4,200. Like, he's dealing with some injuries as well. Like, everybody's dealing with injuries at this point. Miles Sanders went out with that ankle injury, that foot injury before, right? He was having a big game. At the end of that game, he went out with the injury. And I think you want to keep all of your main guys healthy. And Jordan Howard at $4,200. Remember, this guy in 3 weeks had something like 16 red zone targets or 15 red zone touches. That is absolutely absurd for someone who just, came onto the scene 4 weeks ago. He didn't have any in week 11 and he got a little bit banged up, but he is their red zone guy. If we believe that Philadelphia can march up and down the field, and the Washington football team is not going to have their starting lineup, especially on the defensive side, I would trust Jordan Howard to get me at least the looks for touchdowns at $4,200. That's a pretty price, especially if people are going to Miles Sanders.
Reed, let's go to someone you're just looking to fade tonight. I'm sure Pierce will go with someone in that Washington Eagles game. What about you?
Yeah, Pierce is just going to fade that entire game
Right.
completely, not even watch it. But I'm sharing a sentiment here. Terry McLaurin. Who's the quarterback? Who is it? We have no idea.
What's eating Garrett Gilbert Grape?
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, we don't even know that. I mean, we don't know who the quarterback is.
I love that
Right,
movie, by the
exactly.
way. What's Eating Gilbert Grape? That's a phenomenal
Great
movie.
great flick. But this is hard because this is one of my favorite players to watch. I love he's just amazing, and get this guy quarterback. He's a new age Allen Robinson, but we just don't know who's passing the ball. He's coming off a concussion, so I'd be fading Terry.
All right, Jeff, how about you, dude?
I guess
Gilbert.
I guess Reed isn't a big Leo DiCaprio fan.
Oh.
Okay, or Johnny Depp. Well, maybe that's a good thing. But I actually did kind of disagree with Pierce. I like fading Odell Beckham, not from the perspective that he's like played poorly or anything, but again, you look at this situation. I mean, he hasn't practiced. He's coming in. He's only been with the team for 3 weeks. How many plays is there really going to be on the table for Odell Beckham here? You've also got a Rams team who's coming in with both running backs healthy finally. I think it's just going to be a bit of a more conservative game plan, and I think Cooper Kupp is going to be open all day here anyways. Seattle without one of their best cornerbacks for this game. That's one thing I think we do know. And again, I think Odell Beckham is going to be a very popular pick at 4,900, which I think he makes for a good fade candidate because of that. You look at his game log too; like he doesn't get in the end zone in 3 straight. I mean, it's really like not that fantastic a situation. So I like fading him here, mainly because he's going to be popular, but also because I can see a lot of scenarios where they just don't need to rely on Odell Beckham too much today.
Pierce.
I want to fade Jalen Hurts. I just don't think he's going to play a full game. Just with him not practicing. I mean, he practiced with the first string, but I just don't see them having to push this game against a Washington team that has nobody. They might even give him some breaks. I mean, Gardner Minshew played well in the last game. He didn't really deserve to lose his spot. I know Hurts didn't deserve to lose his spot either, but even if Hurts plays, we got to remember he's not a very good quarterback to begin with. And on the main slate, we would never even consider this guy. So just play Matt Stafford.
What's Eating Gilbert Grape was released on December 17th, 1993. So that's, like 28 years or so ago, just a few days
That's
ago.
like a century ago. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even think any of us were alive when that came out.
Yeah, agreed on that. That was also one of Leonardo DiCaprio's, greatest roles. Like, he absolutely crushed it there. Let's wrap the segment with your favorite bet on the DK Sportsbook for either game tonight. Go ahead, Pierce.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with what we've been doing all week, which is the under on the Washington-Philly game. It actually moved up a point. You got to wait, but I imagine at 4 o'clock, if Heineke doesn't come off the COVID list, this thing's going to drop even further. Washington couldn't score it beforehand. They can't score it now. Even if McLaurin's back, they weren't scoring with him on the field. Philadelphia's had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. They're rested. It's just an incredibly unfair advantage that the Eagles have in this game. Washington just doesn't stand a chance. Yeah, they might keep it close, but no one's scoring points in this game.
Reed, talk to me, dude.
Yeah, I think there's a couple out there. I think Jalen Hurts, over half a interception. Interceptions have been one of the props that have hit at the highest in terms of overs of the major prop categories, somewhere like in the upper 50% across the board. I think that's definitely in play. Even though Washington doesn't have a lot of interceptions on the season, I think Jalen Hurts can throw one. But I also think Seattle is live, guys. I think Seattle at +7 is live in this one. I mentioned that Like, and I've been down on Seattle quite a bit. But I don't think the Rams really need, like, they always play each other tough. The NFC West, just choose the underdog and the points, and you're probably going to be profitable this year. I think Seattle wants to play a little bit of a spoiler here. So give me Seattle +7. I think they can do it.
All right, Jeff, favorite bet?
I mean, this Seattle Rams game is so weird. The Rams were sick early in the week. Now the Seahawks, who were healthy on Sunday, are now getting sicker. I tend to agree with Reed, though. Like, I think if you can get +7 on the Seahawks, that's a good bet. I kind of like parlaying here. Take the Eagles on the money line, and then you parlay it with the Seahawks +10. Again, you can go into the alternate line, get -165 on the Seahawks +10, and then you've got the Eagles sitting there at -280 on the money line. I think that's an interesting parlay to get action on both these games. And again, 10 points for the Rams to cover here, which just feels like such a huge task on this kind of week. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at these two games. But I don't really want to touch the player props in these ones just because there's so much movement, and we don't even know who's going to be active yet until the games really kick off. So.
All righty. Gentlemen, we will take an early look at some of the Week 16 spreads coming up right after NBA Building Blocks. All right, DraftKings contributors Gary and Thorne and Matt Meiselman, and the host of the Four Seasons podcast for Ball is Live, Ryan Mogjosh. On your screen, NBA Building Blocks, dudes. Say your favorite DFS plays at the following positions. For tonight's 6-game NBA slate, who will you build around at center, Garion?
I'm going to go with DeAndre Ayton at $8,200. This Lakers roster is just completely decimated by health and safety protocols and injury right now. Really, the only true big they have left is the husk of DeAndre Jordan, who had to play over 20 minutes in their loss to Chicago on Sunday. I just don't see that being a recipe for success against DeAndre Ayton, who was actually able to put up a 15-point, 15-rebound double-double in under 24 minutes against the Hornets this past weekend. 3 straight double-doubles for Ayton. He's averaging almost 1.2 DraftKings points per minute for the season as a whole. He should just absolutely dominate the interior of this Lakers defense. So I like his price point just above $8,000.
All right, Matt, you agree?
Yeah, the Lakers defense is missing their 2 best defensive players. Like Arian said, it's Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard also not there. And I'm not even sure that DeAndre Jordan even sticks in the game much at center. They didn't play him really much at all in the second half of last game. So they may be running a lineup where it's like LeBron or Carmelo or Trevor Ariza playing center. It's a really good matchup. But aside from Ayton, I do want to point out that Damian Lillard is questionable tonight. And if he doesn't play, that just makes everyone look better on Portland. So I'm going to keep coming back to this as we go through the different positions. But Yusuf Nurkic, even though he's not even close to the same position that Lillard is just going to have a lot more to do in terms of ball handling responsibility if you don't have Dame there. So Nurkic could be a really good play if we don't have Lillard playing tonight.
Okay, Ryan, who are you going to build around at center?
Yeah, I love the thought of picking on the Lakers. That gets me really excited. I'll go different here, though. I'll go Jonas Valanciunas at 8,300 versus Portland, who does not care about getting any stops any night. The Pelicans are off a canceled game, so they're plenty rested. Lately, he's been playing the mid-upper 30s in minutes, and last game he played 40 minutes. And his ceiling is just so high for me to pass up. He had 70.8 DraftKings points one night this season. I just loved rostering Jonas Valanciunas, and I love this matchup.
Matt, a forward worth building your lineup around is who and why?
So I'll mention two because there are two injury situations to monitor. I mentioned Lillard possibly being out, so that would make Norman Powell also probably the primary scorer and ball dominant player for Portland. And then we have the same situation for Kristaps Porzingis in Dallas. We don't know if he's playing or not either. So 6,100 for Tim Hardaway Jr. normally is just way too much, but Luka Doncic is already out. Porzingis could be out. Maxi Kleber is, I think, already out also. So Hardaway could just end up needing to play more minutes because the team is shorthanded, and certainly would need more shooting responsibility if you take KP off the floor. So Powell or Hardaway, and potentially both. I think those situations could end up looking really strong later in the day.
All right, Ryan.
Yeah, I want to keep an eye on the Knicks because Evan Fournier is on an absolute heater. He's playing like he's in France again, like he knows how to play basketball. 5,100 versus Detroit. 28 and 43 minutes in his last two games, 29 fantasy points, and 48.8 fantasy points in his last game. Fournier is looking really good. And by default, there's no Rose, there's no Obi Toppin, there's no RJ Barrett. They're going to have somebody score the ball. It's been Evan Fournier the past 2 nights.
And Gare Bear, forward, you're going to build around.
Yeah, well, these guys did a pretty good job of just picking clean the mid-tier. So I guess I'll talk about a top-end guy. Brandon Ingram, expensive. He's $8,900, but Ryan already mentioned the matchup against Portland, just a terrible defense. I do think it's worth noting if Lillard doesn't play, suddenly you do get into a scenario where I didn't think I'd be saying this sentence at all this season, but the Pelicans might be in, like, blowout territory where you would worry about game script concerns with someone like Ingram. But right now, as has been the case with Valanciunas, they are just giving Ingram every single minute he can handle. In 8 starts in December, he's averaging almost 38 minutes per game, and that's led to 27, 6, and 6 with, you know, a pretty good true shooting percentage as well at 588. So Ingram's just been playing really well, 50-plus DraftKings points in 4 of his last 8 games. Again, I would keep an eye on the Lillard thing, but if Lillard's in there, I think this game is competitive enough where Ingram's just going to be on the court for maybe 40 minutes.
Ryan, which guard has building block potential?
So if Dame's in, I like Dame. 9,800, which is expensive, but I was a little worried about his injury. But the last 5 games, he seems to be fine. There's a 52 fantasy point day sprinkled in there, a 63 sprinkled in there. And I like just this matchup. The Pelicans themselves don't care about defense, 24th in the league in defensive rating. Just both teams are run and gun and don't really like to play defense. A lot of their emphasis is on offense. So whether it's Dame, Ingram, Valanciunas, Nurkic, pay attention to the injuries, but you can't really go wrong with rostering anybody from this game.
All right, Garion.
Well, Matt already mentioned Tim Hardaway Jr. The other guy in that backcourt is obviously Jalen Brunson, who's $7,400. I just think that's a pretty fair price for Brunson, especially if Porzingis doesn't end up playing. This is a team that was already essentially running like an 8.5-man rotation with Porzingis in there. So if he's not playing tonight, Brunson, who's played about 38 minutes a game his last 2, could also be looking at maybe even increasing that already crazy number, which is kind of just the case around the league right now with some of these shortened rotations. But so far this season, with Luka not playing and Brunson starting, he's averaging 39 DraftKings points per game. So he is among the safer assets, I would say, already on this slate. And then if Porzingis doesn't play, that only increases his ceiling.
All right, Matty.
Yeah, I like both those calls. If Lillard does play, could be a little lower owned. Brunson, I think even if you have Porzingis out there, is still a little bit too cheap. And then I like Anthony Simons if Lillard's out. And then just a quick thing, we already just got news rolling in that Dwight Howard and Taylor Horton-Tucker have cleared protocols, so we're going to have to maybe walk back our DeAndre Ayton calls. Yeah, I still like him, but whatever. Just another reminder that we have to look out for news all day long because things keep changing in today's NBA. But the guy I am targeting the most here is Simons if we do get Lillard out of the lineup.
Well, Matt, who would you target if you were considering building around a value play?
Yeah, I think someone on Minnesota has to do well. So Jalen Noel is going to be pretty popular, I think, for $3,300. You have Patrick Beverley out. You have Jared Vanderbilt out. I think Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, like all of these guys are stepping into larger roles. So I don't know that I necessarily want to just pick one of them, but for just like overall value play, I'm going to say that someone who's cheap on the Timberwolves probably needs to do well. I think those are the main 3. So that's the place I'm looking to find a value play.
Gary, and what about you, dude?
Yeah, Jaden McDaniels is part of the name I had circled. Malik Beasley might be the safest of those guys. He hasn't shot well with in the starting lineup for Anthony Edwards as of late, but you have to figure his shot normalizes a little bit over the course of time. I would also just say, gotta mention Max Struss, I guess. This guy, 28 points per game, 6 3-pointers made his last 2 starts. And that was with PJ Tucker playing. And PJ Tucker is now not in this game, along with Jimmy Butler and Caleb Martin and all of the front court guys missing for the Heat. Obviously, for that scenario, you have to watch whether or not Tyler Hero is going to make his return. He's been questionable for what feels like 17 consecutive weeks. But if he's in there tonight, that would ruin Max's value a little bit. But $4,700, I'm still willing to go back to the well with this guy if he's under 5K.
Ryan, hook me up with a value play.
Yeah, it's early, but the boys nailed it. I circled 7 times Jaden McDaniels. He played 32 minutes last game with Jared Vanderbilt in. There's no Ant, there's no Patrick Beverly, there's no Prince, there's no Okogie. The T-Wolves need bodies. Jaden McDaniels looks good.
Garion, let's wrap this thing up by switching over to the DK Sportsbook, buddy. Just, let's see, 6 games on the slate, right? So give me your favorite bet.
So I had DeAndre Ayton over 11.5 rebounds written down at -110. I will say I probably am like 10% less confident in this now that Dwight Howard's playing, but I'm still willing to take this one to the bank. I think DeAndre Ayton is just one of the elite rebounders in the game. I was also going to point out that they have a prop special for this contest. Ayton 20-plus points, 14-plus rebounds is +600. That's not a terrible sprinkle in my opinion.
All right, Ryan, favorite bet tonight?
Yeah, I'm obsessing over these T-Wolves. Jaden McDaniels, over 9.5 points. Last game, he played 32 minutes, as I mentioned, with Jared Vanderbilt in, playing 38. Now Vanderbilt's out, and Jaden only has to get 9.5 when he had 12 last game. I love that.
And then, Matt, bring us home.
So I'll give one last contingent pick here. If Lillard doesn't play, I think the natural inclination is to say, okay, let's bet the Pelicans. But as much as Lillard matters to the point spread, I think he matters significantly more, like 2 or 3x more to the total, because Lillard is not a great defensive player. He's a tremendous offensive player, and he also drives the pace in a way that the team can't really do without CJ McCollum, especially. Like, Blazers games just slow down so much when you take Dame off the floor. So this total's already down from 219 to 218. If Lillard doesn't play, I think we see it drop to like 212, if not lower. So if you have a hunch that Lillard's not going to play, I'm not sure which way that news is going to break. Or maybe you just want to try to wait it out and then make the bet, as the news is breaking. This total will plummet if Lillard doesn't play. So I really like the under there.
Friendly reminder, everyone, follow the DK Nation Twitter account. Follow these 3 gentlemen on Twitter for the latest up-to-date updates around the association. Just 2 games on the NHL slate tonight, and we've got a panel here to talk about all of them, both of them, after this. All right, let's do that hockey. RotoWire's AJ Scholes and Paul Bruno, and senior fantasy editor and host of the Fantasy on Ice podcast for NHL.com. We got Pete Jensen. They're all here for some NHL opening face-off. We got 2 games on the slate, guys. Final night before the league pauses the season until after Christmas because of COVID-19, and it looks like AJ will be the one coming down your chimney on Friday night. So go ahead, Santa. Favorite DFS play at center tonight?
Well, honestly, with their price tags, I think you go with both the first-line centers for Washington and Vegas in Lars Eller at 4,300 and Chandler Stephenson at 5,100. Look, versus the Flyers, it's definitely a night to stack the Caps, but don't sleep on the Golden Knights either. I think they're plenty capable of continuing to rack up goals. They're on a 5-game win streak. They've put up 22 goals over that stretch. Stevenson, for his part, doesn't have any of those goals, but he's got 8 helpers in those 5 games. So I think both guys are in play given that price range.
All right, Pete, what do you think, dude?
I'm definitely going with Lars Eller. I love the way this guy steps up in the whole Capitals team. Whenever anybody's out, of course, Washington's likely going to be without TJ Oshie, Nicholas Backstrom, Evgeny Kuznetsov, in addition to Anthony Mantha, who's on long-term IR. But it never seems to matter. They're still one of the best offenses in the league on a nightly basis. Even if they're giving up some goals, they're usually scoring just as many. And if it's a narrow loss, Eller is very likely to return value. He's also Danish, which I love because I am as well. So go with Eller at center.
All right, Danish dudes supporting Danish dudes. Paul, favorite center?
So, it's easy to say with Kuznetsov and Backstrom out that Eller's your guy and Alexei Protas steps into the number 2 slot. But why not look across the ice and look at the Flyers, what they're offering? It's Couturier and Giroux, and they should outclass anybody that Washington rolls out at center. So that's their decided advantage, and I'm going to go with it. I'm saying Giroux is my guy. He's got 8 points in the last 10 games, and I look for the hot stick to take advantage of this mismatch at a key position tonight. He only costs $5,700.
Pete, take me to the wings and things department. Who's your favorite winger?
I really like Max Pacioretty. Even if Mark Stone is a little banged up, I know he missed the last game. We'll see what happens with Stone. If Stone is there, then obviously it's even better. But I even still like spending up for Pacioretty as a standalone. 20 points in 14 games this year. That's top 5 in the NHL. Very elite company in points per game. And then 5 shots on goal per game. You won't find anybody better out there in terms of putting shots on the net and racking up a high floor DFS, even if he doesn't get a point. You could see something like 7 or 8 shots very easy from Pacioretty, and none of us would blink an eye, even if he doesn't score a goal. But he has been scoring goals this season. So, yeah, I'm going with Patches on the wing. Even though you have to spend up for him, he'll be well worth it.
Okay, Paul, who's well worth it at wing?
First of all, I'm going to disagree with Pete. I'll have a hot take about Pacioretty later. I'll let that percolate. But with the top line misfiring for Las Vegas, I've relied more on their consistent play of their second line. So I like Marchessault for $5,100 tonight. He has 5 goals and 2 helpers over his last 10 games. On this short slate, I don't mind looking at the other team on the ice in this one too. I'll look at both Andre Palat for $4,700 and Alex Killorn at $4,300. These guys are consistently underpriced, fellas, over the season, I find, even though they play a lot of high leverage minutes for this club. And tonight that'll be the case as well. So why not try and fit both of these top 6 wingers? If you believe Tampa's going to win this game, they play a lot of the high leverage minutes tonight and produce.
AJ, who's your favorite winger?
Well, all is right in the world again, folks, as Paul is once again wrong. And I agree with Pete here. Pacioretty is one of the guys to use tonight. I also think if you're saving down on center and you're going to use Lars Eller and Chandler Stephenson without having to pay that much, use Ovi and Pacioretty as your spend-up guys. I think you can use both. I think they're both options tonight. Ovi, for his part, averaging 1.52 points per game this season. I get on a small slate, you might consider fading him as a contrarian play, but I just don't think that's the right call with how hot he's been lately. And maybe on Pacioretty's side, yeah, just 1 assist in his last 3 games. And maybe that's enough to convince people like Paul to fade him. And then when he goes off, like Pete suggested, you're going to be in the money.
All right, Paul, favorite DFS play back on the blue line?
Well, I'm saving money at forward, so I'm going to spend big on the blue line tonight. It's going against what I normally do. AJ will certainly vouch for me there. But I'm going right to the top and saying Victor Hedman has to be my guy tonight. He's playing 22 to 25 minutes every night, anchoring the power play and getting the bulk of the offensive zone starts for the two-time Stanley Cup champs. He has 12 points in his last 10 games, as well as a career best point per game pace this season. I fit him in at $7,400 price tag and expect another big game against a quality opponent. He seems to rise to those occasions consistently. The other solid option for me may well be across the ice again in Tampa captain against the Tampa captain, as Shea Theodore has been almost as good lately with 9 points in his last 10 games. And he is only going to cost $5,100. So that could be the most expensive defensive tandem that I've ever iced in a single slate of games on DraftKings.
All right, Pete.
I'm going the cheaper route here. I like what Travis Sanheim's doing, and I think he's going to have a really low roster percentage because, like the guys mentioned, you're going to be gravitating towards most people, the teams like Vegas and, of course, the Washington Capitals. But I do think there is some sneaky appeal to Sanheim. He's got 4 points in his past 3 games with 6 shots and 2 blocks. He's playing some big minutes under Mike Yeo so far since the coaching change for Philly. So ride with that trend. Don't spend up on defense here and spend up elsewhere. I think that's the strategy for this 2-game slate.
Okay. AJ, you agree with that strategy?
No, I mean, I think it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think you need to go to the top of the price range, but I don't think you need to bottom out either. And I like the call on Shea Theodore at 5,100 here. You compare him to what he's doing lately to like Alex Pietrangelo, and Shea Theodore is just as productive without breaking the bank. So because of that price difference, I think you can afford to go down a little bit further here and go in the 5,100 option. And then also, consider tossing in a guy on a high octane offense. It's worked in the past for me. I'm not going to go to the total bottom, but Martin Fehervary is playing for Washington tonight. He'll come in at just 2,900. So if he's on the ice for one of those Caps goals that I anticipate we'll see tonight, picks up an assist, you're looking good.
AJ, who is a high-priced player on the board you are most definitely going to fade?
Well, for me, because I'm going to the top in Ovi and Pacioretty, I think it has me naturally just avoiding Steven Stamkos tonight. It's a more difficult matchup than some of the other guys have at the top of the price range. And I just don't think it makes sense to avoid Pacioretty or Ovechkin. Now, having said that, if you're going to fade Patches or you're going to fade Ovi, then Stamkos might be a solid contrarian play here. But I just don't think it's worth it. So for me, I'm going to stay away from the Lightning for the most part, including Steven Stamkos.
Pete, is there a player you're fading?
Yeah, I was going to say Stamkos as well. He's got 1 goal in his past, 5 or 6 games. He's got a good shot volume, but I just don't like the prospect of him on pretty much every shift going up against probably Pietrangelo or Shea Theodore. Vegas is a stout defensive team, even without, one of their top guys, Alec Martinez, who's been out for a while. But Pietrangelo is like one of the guys that I would roster tonight. I could see a lot of those shots that Stamkos attempts with that shot volume not getting through. So maybe Pietrangelo racks up the blocks tonight. And maybe if you are going to choose one of the higher priced defensemen on the board, you go with Pietrangelo in the hope that he neutralizes Steven Stamkos.
Paul, high-priced player, you're fading.
I'm fading the 2 big boys. It's time to come out with my strategy tonight. Everybody and their mother is going to be on Ovi and Pacioretty. I'm going to tell you a case why you shouldn't be. Ovechkin's not going to be playing with his 2 great centers. He's going to be playing with lesser options around him. Guess what? I would put 2 guys on him all night long. And then you got Pacioretty. He's on a 3-game cool-off period after his hot streak. That's indicative of this guy's career. He's like a big bear that goes to sleep for long periods of time.
Oh, yeah.
He's in a slumber right now again. That's why he's not an elite scorer, guys. He has never done even 40 goals in his career in any one season. And it's stretches like this that make that possible. It's happening again. I'm off him.
This is that time of year, though, Paul. We are all big bears who will go to sleep for long periods of time. So, listen, I know the feeling. Let's wrap it up with this. Favorite value play on this teeny tiny small slate this evening, Pete?
I'll go Taylor Radish. If you haven't heard of him, he's been stepping up in a big way for the Lightning lately in their bottom six. He gets elevated here and there for different shifts. But even if he's in the bottom six, we've seen how valuable a lot of these guys have been through the years. He's got 8 points in his past 9 games, despite that role, and he's got 20 shots in the span, so including 4 goals. So, yeah, Taylor Radish, one of those guys that's stepping up to the plate and delivering here in the short term with all these weird circumstances, and of course Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov missing in the Lightning lineup for an extended period of time. Somehow that team always finds the prospects, and Radish is a rookie that's blooming here for Tampa.
AJ, give me some value.
Well, as Pete mentioned, Washington probably going to be without Backstrom, Oshie, Kuznetsov. And so Connor Sherry is going to bump up to that number 1 power play unit to play alongside Ovechkin and John Carlson. He's going to cost you just $3,300, and he's actually been the second most productive player on the Caps in December with 6 points, second only to Ovi. So I like him at that price point tonight.
Paul, bring us home.
Well, Lars Eller was mentioned earlier. I think he applies in this spot. If you think that Ovechkin's going to have a big night, despite the absence of his 2 other normal centers, Eller's going to play a part in that role. But the guy that I'm really keying on in this spot is James Van Riemsdyk. He remains a power play specialist in Philadelphia. The Lightning will only be vulnerable if they get into penalty trouble tonight, and that's when JVR is going to be on the ice. If he can get a goal, he'll return a nice value on that $37 price tag.
All right, guys, appreciate all the help. Also, big announcement this morning as well. At least it's being reported that NHL players are out of the Olympics. So I don't think that's a huge surprise with the spike in COVID. Also, the league going to hit the pause button and return after Christmas, starting tomorrow. Hockey dudes, we love you. Appreciate you. We're going to look at some Week 16 spreads, an early look at them because we're still technically in Week 15. That's around the NFL right after this. It's our final block here of the show, and we got DraftKings contributor Pierce Dietrich, Jeff Mark, Steve Buchanan is here in studio. Do not be fooled, everyone. He is sitting 6 feet from me. On your screen, fun little segment here of high or low. Are the following Week 16 opening spreads too high or too low? Let's go with Buffalo at your Patriots, Bukes. Looks like Pats are what? 2-point favorite at home right now? Too high, too low? 2.5. 2.5, I'm being told.
Yeah, it is 2.5. I just think this is too high. I think this really should end up being a pick 'em, and it could end up getting that way as the week progresses here. I mean, these are two really evenly matched teams. Like that last game you saw these two teams play, just toss that out the window. You're not going to see anything like that this week. Obviously, without Tre'Davious White, Buffalo has struggled in their secondary, but, we've also seen the Patriots struggle to move the ball downfield at times. So this is going to be such a big game for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, this is going to be the biggest game they have left on the schedule here. I would get this game at a pick 'em. I just think I really just can't pick a side right now.
Okay, this game could very well solidify the AFC East title, Jeff. Too high, too low?
I think it's too low. I mean, I look, maybe Steve is just trying to not jinx his home team here, but I really do think there's a pretty clear gap between these two teams. New England has shown us all year. I mean, they're a quality team. Yeah, they lost to the Colts on the road last week, but guess what? Buffalo doesn't have Jonathan Taylor. Again, New England also lost some close games early in the year. I don't know, man. I mean, you look at New England as well, just in terms of what they do, covering in this spot. They've got a really good record. Since 2017, they're 22-15-1 as home favorites covering. After a loss, they're 14-11 since 2000 covering. I just feel like at under 3 points, you have to take the Patriots in this spot. They're basically saying, the Bills are maybe even the better team, or these two teams are equal. Yeah. I don't think that's the case at all. Oh. I think New England's the more complete team, and I think they cover this.
Pierce, should be a much different game than that windy affair we saw just a few weeks ago in Buffalo.
What should be, but it's still New England, and it's December, so let's pump the brakes on that a little bit.
No. I'm wearing shorts right now. It's 10 degrees outside. I'm wearing shorts.
Shorts or jorts?
They're shorts.
It's too low for me. It's a bit of an overreaction from last week. Yeah, New England lost, but they played a possible Super Bowl contender on the road. They made some mistakes. Overall, for the entire season, New England has been one of the best teams in football. Meanwhile, Buffalo, yeah, they rebounded last week, but they rebounded against a pretty bad Carolina team. Buffalo's offense still didn't look that great in that game. Buffalo is 4-5 in their last 9 games. Their 4 wins were against Carolina, New Orleans, the Jets, Miami. Those are really not great wins. And when Buffalo faces good teams, we've seen what happens. They lose. And maybe Steve's right that this is more of a pick 'em and this game is settled by a point. But I think that the Patriots are going to win, so I have no problem laying 2.5.
All right, let's go ahead and just fast forward here to Monday Night Football. It's the Dolphins. Dolphins are streaking here, 7-7 at the Saints. Saints are 3-point favorites at home. Jeff, is this spread too high or too low?
I mean, I think it's too low, but my God, the Saints just feel like such a trap here.
Yeah.
I'm ready to be trapped, though. My emotions, everything. I liked what the Saints have done by just putting Taysom Hill and just running a conservative offense and just letting their defense and running game take over games. And I just don't trust the Miami Dolphins is what it comes down to. It's a great little story. It's a great little winning streak. They've beaten the Jets twice. They've beaten the Giants without Daniel Jones. They've beaten the Panthers. Who cares about any of those wins? And by the way, they just about blew the game against the Jets last week. I think the Saints at home, this is just too tough a test. And I think they're getting disrespected in the odds here at only -3, basically saying on a neutral field, these two teams would be equal. I don't think that's the case. The Saints defense should dominate here. I think they turn the ball over a couple times on Tua, who's just has been throwing quite a few interceptions every game. And I think the Saints maybe even march to a double-digit win here. So, Again, feels a little trappy with the Saints coming off that big win against Tampa, but I think this one's too low.
Did you watch the game the other night? Did you watch Taysom Hill play and the Saints play football?
I watched the Saints defense play, and I watched them absolutely destroy what was supposedly one of the best offenses in the league. So,
okay, well, yeah. It's the Dolphins defense that's really fueled this win streak as well. Steve, what do you think about this spread, man?
Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm going here. Do I want to take the Saints as favorites in this
one?
No! Absolutely not.
No.
The game we're going to talk about next, that was my favorite underdog play with the Lions. Now it's moved to the Dolphins because we don't know if Jared Goff's going to play this game or not. But that resounding win by the Saints against the Buccaneers, 9-0 against that team that lost almost every offensive player that was taking the field in that one. They were able to knock them out. That was a really convincing win. Like you mentioned it here, the Dolphins, the reason why they're playing so well, they're allowing an average of 15 points per game over the past 4 games. They're just getting healthier. If they can get over some of their COVID issues, get Waddle back in the mix here, I think they should absolutely trample over the the Saints this one. So the wrong team is
Yep.
favored, and the Dolphins are a nice teaser leg this week as well.
Yeah, and Pierce, the Saints have not been a strong bet at home. 1-4 ATS inside the dome.
Yeah, Pierce.
Yeah, that's because the Saints are not a good team. This is
Oh.
too high. We're overreacting to them beating the Jets, and like Steve mentioned, they beat the Buccaneers, who were without all of their stars, and even in that game, Tampa still had a good chance at winning. They just made mistakes. They missed field goals, a red zone fumble by Tom Brady. So the Saints are not a good team. And to completely dismiss what the Dolphins are doing and overlook the fact that the Saints allow 30 points per game on their 5-game losing streak, well, at least Miami is beating teams. And as Steve mentioned, their defense has turned around. Their secondary got healthy. They've been practicing in the second half, and they're starting to look like the defensive backs that we're expecting all season. Miami has actual receivers. Miami has an actual quarterback. Now, Alvin Kamara could have an amazing game and prove me wrong, but Taysom Hill is not going to prove me wrong. Their receivers are not going to prove me wrong. The Dolphins are the better team.
All right, let's go to Detroit at Atlanta. So you got the Falcons, 5.5-point favorites at home. Lions have not won a road game this season, Pierce, but they are 4-3 ATS coming off that win against Arizona.
We know where I'm going to go with this.
Yeah,
this
baby.
Is way too high.
Yeah, baby.
Way too high. Come on. Like, Atlanta has benefited from a soft schedule, and you might say, well, this is another example of that soft schedule. Detroit is a 2-win team, but they have won 2 of the last 3. More importantly, they have covered in 5 of the last 6. They're 9-4 ATS this season. They may not be a good team, but Detroit is gutsy. They're gritty. They play teams close. They beat some teams. I like Detroit to be your outright underdog winner this week.
That's the pretty much 500 Detroit Lions, Jeff.
Yeah, the Super Bowl MVP Detroit Lions. I hate this, but I have to take Atlanta here. I mean, I just do. And it's not like I think Atlanta is a good team, but you look at the situation, you look at what Atlanta has done this year. What do? They beat bad teams. That's just what they do. That's what Matt Ryan does. They beat the Panthers. They beat the Jags. And like they beat earlier in the year, they beat up on the Dolphins and the Jets, and they won a lot of those games by a touchdown. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. Matt Ryan's going to come in, take advantage of a bad Detroit Lions secondary. They're going to get a little lead. And then what is Detroit going to do? I mean, I know they put up some points last week against Arizona and they caught them off guard, but there's a letdown factor here. There's still no TJ Hawkinson. I do not know what is up with DeAndre Swift. And now they got a backup quarterback. I think that everyone is just going to overreact. Oh yeah, the Lions are a gritty team. They're great. They're going to grit it out. I think Atlanta comes in here, wins the most boring game of the year by a touchdown, and everyone with Lions tickets goes home with a sad emoji on their face.
Steve, the Lions have had some flashes here with new coach Dan Campbell. Oh, there we go, a little 2-shot.
Oh.
So what do we think about the 5.5-point spread?
I mean, obviously, this one moved once the news that Jared Goff was going to be out in this one here, so, potentially could be out. I mean, with the new COVID protocols, who even knows what any of this means? You could end up playing in this game. We don't know yet. If it's Tim Boyle, I mean, absolutely forget it. I mean, this is somebody who's appeared in 2 games now. In those games, 15 for 23 in his pass attempts for 77 yards. He's averaging 3.3 yards per pass attempt. Just absolutely brutal. If we can get Jared Goff in here, this would turn into my favorite underdog play here. But if it ends up being Tim Boyle, it's disgusting to take anything in this game. But I'd have to side with Atlanta in this one, so I think it's set right.
All right, dude. What do you think about Chiefs 9.5-point favorites at home against the Steelers?
Yeah, so, this was a Chiefs team that coming into the season was one of the worst cover teams in the league. They've snapped off 5 straight covers in a row. But with that being said, 3 of those games where they covered have been by a field goal or less. That's what the line was set at, but they've held teams to exactly 9 points in 3 straight games before the Chargers put 28 points up against them. The defense has been the biggest story in this one here. They've really showed up as of late against this Steelers team that's just struggling to move the ball through the air on the ground. You should cover this one. This might actually be a tad bit too low.
Yeah, I know yesterday Travis Kelsey was placed on the reserve COVID-19 list, so I don't know if he's going to be back over the weekend there, Jeff, but would that impact your decision here?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something you need to monitor. Obviously, we want Travis Kelsey out there if you're thinking about taking Kansas City. And, I mean, this isn't a game I necessarily want to target. Steve mentioned some of the long-term trends with Kansas City that really have not been a good home cover team. 7-10 covering as home favorites since 2019. But, it's definitely like, you can look at the long-term thing, but it's really the short-term we should be concerned about. And they have been a lot better. And I think realistically, it's just a case of they're just a better team than Pittsburgh. And I expect them to win this game. And I expect that, whoever is going to cover here, Pittsburgh or Kansas City, it's probably going to come down to like a last-minute garbage time drive by the Pittsburgh Steelers being down 2 scores. And does Ben Roethlisberger get in the end zone here or not? I would side with Kansas City at under 10 points. I think now that it's moved under 10, probably on the Travis Kelsey news, that you do take Kansas City. Again, this isn't like my favorite game to target, as you can probably tell how I'm talking about it. But, I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they allowed too many rushing yards. Yeah, they came up with some turnovers against Tennessee last week. But, I mean, Ryan Tannehill isn't playing quarterback this week. So I think Kansas City's probably going to be okay in that regard. I expect Kansas City to cruise. I think that at under 10, this one's just a little bit too low in terms of their favor. So I would side with the KC Chiefs here.
Okay, Pierce, bring us home here. Is this spread too long or too short?
Yeah, this is too low. It's going to move up towards Kansas City. It's going to get higher. You look at double-digit favorites this season, 19, 14, and 1. That might not seem like the biggest differential, but previously you got about a 500 or even lower with these double-digit favorites covering. They've covered in 9 of the last 12 games this season, and the ones that have missed the double-digit favorites was last week. It was Tampa, that debacle, Miami, for whatever reason, being favored by -10, and then those Detroit Lions covering the spread as well. Double-digit favorites have played well. And then you've got Kansas City, who is trending the right direction offensively. Their defenses look great. In Pittsburgh, yeah, they're getting some wins, but all the advanced metrics say that defense is bad and that offense is bad, and Kansas City should cover in this game.
Guys, great work. Hey, great work over there.
Thanks.
You're welcome. There we are. That's a show. See everyone back here for the Sweat at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. At noon here, would you like to take part in this? At noon with the Falcons and Giants, that'll be a Madden sim. And then the slate comes your way at 5 o'clock with Chirag, Eminem, and your dude, Brendan Glasheen, who still owes me Chick-fil-A and is yet to deliver. He's a coward. Have a great day, everyone.